Okay, I have not worn a dress in so long, and I'm wearing heels. I'm all dressed up. I forgot how to walk and like sit. Like,
well, you know what? You look stunning. I'm telling you. Doesn't she look gorgeous? Can we give a quick shout out? Who are you wearing?
I am wearing Prabal Gurung. Who are you wearing?
Excuse me. I think I'm wearing one of our favorite designers, Peter Do. Yes. He's amazing and has been so supportive with Heart of Dinner, one of the first fashion designers ever to step in and fundraise for us. So I love amazing people behind amazing brands, including Prabal.
Yes.
I'm so excited.
I tried really hard to wear all Asian designers on this book tour.
Yes.
And then I realized there are no Asian denim wear designers. So I was like,
interesting.
People were like, what are you wearing? I'm wearing all Asian, but not the jeans. But the good thing about this is like one of the few in-person events we've done. And the good thing about virtual events is you can literally be in your like jammies on the bottom. And then I was wearing like a nice sweater, just distracting them with like color and like nice sweaters.
Oh my God, I love that. I'm the same person. You'll be lucky if you find me with pants on in a virtual kind of situation, honestly.
Okay.
So yeah, he was like, okay, we're going there. All right, so.
I'll remember that the next time we Zoom together.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm so excited we're here today, and thank you all so much for coming out and braving the cold. It's so good to see so many of you, and it's really nice to be back and in person as well. And we're gonna be celebrating and talking about I Am Golden. Congratulations.
Thank you.
We're so excited. Also illustrated beautifully by Sophie Diao, and I just read it the other day, and I was crying multiple times throughout the entire book. And I read it again today, and I teared up yet again, because it brought back so many memories of growing up and what it feels like to be lonely and to have loneliness follow you everywhere you go, and straddling between two different worlds like so many of us Asian Americans can understand, going to school and putting up, in a way, like not a front, but in a way you're trying to survive in this society, in this world, and then you come home to a completely different world. So I would love to talk about that, and when you do mention, quite often actually, you do share about straddling these two worlds and in a way code switching. What was that like for you?
Well, growing up, so I'm a first-generation American. My parents moved here in the 70s. We, like Tom, who is here in the front row, we literally just like ran out of, Tom got like one woo. Thank you to the one person who wooed him, thank you. So we literally like just left, the apartment. My mom and dad are watching like the kids right now. And, it's interesting because like, when I speak with my mom and dad now, even now, it's like mostly in Mandarin. And Ren and Tao are at the age where they know we're speaking in Chinese. And growing up, it's like everything at home was Chinese. So it was like Chinese music, Chinese food, Chinese language, Chinese culture just all around us. And then I grew up here in New York City, but at most of the schools I went to, I was like maybe like one of two or three Asians. And I like vividly remember the first time I was bullied. I vividly remember the first time I was like made to feel like less than or othered. And like I still walk by that school. Like it's right near my office, which I haven't been to in 2 years, but like I still walk by it and I am transported instantly to my like 8-year-old self. And like the boy who was like pulling up the corners of his eyes and telling me to go home. And then I also remember like we were in art class that same day actually, and this is pre-COVID, but obviously like the desks were like facing right opposite. We were like in two desks facing each other. And I remember we were told to draw a portrait of each other. And then he basically was like, with like a spiteful voice, he was like, I'm gonna make you yellow, because that's what you are. And I remember being like so confused by that, because at home, I just knew nothing but like acceptance for the color of my skin, and like it felt normal. And at school, I had never thought about it before that day. And so when I wrote this book, it really brought me back to like my childhood self and trying to write the book that I didn't have growing up. There were no books with like covers, featuring someone Asian.
Yeah.
Like maybe I could think of like one or two Asian characters. Like there was Claudia from the Babysitter's Club.
Yes, yeah.
Is that it?
Yes.
Like, right? And she was like an icon, don't get me wrong. Like she was a huge influence for me. But so I tried to write, and even now when you go to bookstores, when you ask them, oh, I'd love to see some Asian American literature, like children's literature, what do you have? And it's 5 books. It's literally like Well, now this book. There is The Name Jar, Watercress, which just won the Caldecott Prize, Eyes That Kiss the Corner, I Dream of Po Po, and like maybe that's it. Like maybe one or two more. And like there's been huge leaps and bounds made. Sorry, I talk a lot.
No, not at all.
Huge leaps and bounds over the last few years, especially in the wake of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter. There's been a lot more representation, but I do feel like Asian representation is still catching up. But I hope that we're at a tipping point.
I really do feel we are, and thank you for contributing to that, by the way, and leading the way. You know what really hit me was that you mentioned you're 8 years old when that happened to you with the bullying, that first exposure. Your oldest child is almost 8 years old, right?
Yeah, she just turned 7.
See, isn't that, so you felt that urgency right now, and when you really felt that urgency, especially at the tip of the announcement of the pandemic, and you're hearing a lot of news. Can you kind of go into that with us? Because I think that's so powerful, just for everybody to know about how one person truly can make a difference, and don't think otherwise. When you're feeling something that really emotionally impacts you, look at somebody like Eva who took action, and now look at what we have as Asian Americans as a whole. So,
well, first of all, that is like, I mean, look at you.
no, okay, no, we're not going there.
You
no,
know, like we have an icon in our midst. Like, first of all, like I just want to like kind of bow down to Yin, because thank you for doing this. First of all, I never considered anyone else to moderate this, because she has this amazing organization called Heart of Dinner, which I've posted a lot about on my Instagram, which delivers meals to homebound Asian elders. And so as part of the activity today, after this session, if you are joining the signing line, you're going to see paper brown bags, and you're going to be able to decorate them, because those bags, which you guys will decorate and send love and put love into, are going to be filled with yummy food and delivered to homebound Asian seniors. So again, the organization is Heart of Dinner. And part of it, like, and you guys just served your 100,000th.
Yeah, we just reached 100,000 meals thanks to the Heart of Dinner crew out here. Yeah.
100,000 meals in like a year. But it's all tied back into like actually the question you asked, because there can be one person such as Yin, or one person kind of representing in a positive way, but all it takes is for someone also to say something in mainstream media that's negative for like this ripple effect of hate to happen. And so I vividly remember hearing the first time I heard the term China virus, and I remember thinking like, this is going to be really bad. And calling my parents immediately, they live in the East Village, and saying like, you know, there's going to be like a wave of hate crimes. Like this is going to like incite people and kind of encourage people to lash out against Asians, and they don't care like that you've lived here for like 40 years. It doesn't matter. And my mom and dad were like, there's no way. We've lived here for like decades. New York is the safest place to be because we're surrounded by people from everywhere. And Eva, as they often say, you're being too worried. You're worrying too much. Stop worrying, Eva. And I'm like, I'm telling you. And I told them to wear sunglasses, scarves, not speak Chinese in the street. If they go out, only go out with each other. And they like did not believe me. And then within days, hate crimes started happening, mostly in the West Coast, and then it started happening in the East Coast as well. And even 2 weeks ago, and this was not classified as a hate crime, but there was a Asian American woman who was pushed onto the subway tracks. And it's like, I was so worried about my parents and just like all Asians, because I just, with Ren especially, like I didn't want her to see the words China virus. Like she's able to read now, and so there was graffiti in Union Square that said Chinese, Japanese, Korean, like Malaysians, send them all home. And I like walk my son by that graffiti every day and think to myself, like, well, I'm just glad he can't read, because like what would he think to himself if he saw that?
I'm so sorry for putting you in the spot with a lot of pressure, but because we have an audience full of a lot of parents who have families and children who are quite young, around your children's age, how have you figured out how to approach this with your kids so that there is safety being discussed, there is also the instillment of confidence like you do beautifully in your book, but how do you advise everyone else in the room, in addition to reading the book to your children, how else can you talk to the kids, truly like sitting them down and preparing them for this reality?
It's hard, because it's like, I wish like a book like this could be the panacea and just like change everything, but I do think bullying still exists in huge ways, obviously, despite living in New York City and times changing so much. And I feel lucky that Ren and Tao haven't encountered it yet. I leave out River because he's like 8 months old and basically he's met like no one. He like knows, like anytime he sees someone new, he's like, who are you? So like he really loves the FedEx guy. Anyway, so Ren and Tao haven't encountered it yet. The other, like it was probably 6 or 8 months ago, Ren, my daughter, was like making silly faces, and she made like 20 silly faces, including like pulling her mouth and sticking out her tongue. And one of them, she did pull up her eyes, but it wasn't done with the intention of like, she didn't realize what it meant. And I had to stop her and be like, oh, Ren, like that last one, like you shouldn't do. And I had to explain that like when mommy was younger, and even now a lot of people do that because they're trying to tease Chinese people or Asian people. And she like totally did not just kind of understand the concept of why someone would do that. But it's like every day, it's like planting seeds of like confidence and self-esteem, talking proudly about how, mommy's Chinese and Popo and Gong Gong are Chinese. When we like talk about Chinatown, the food, like dumplings, Chinese New Year, every day, every time you have a conversation, you're planting a seed. Yeah. And I think it's like not just for Asian, parents, all parents. It's like all you can do is hope to plant all these seeds of confidence, of self-esteem, of pride, and hope that when they are in a situation of pressure or like teasing or something, that those seeds are like have roots deep enough that will allow them to like stand strong.
That was so beautiful. I'm tearing up. Eva. Oh. Seriously, I do love that you also mentioned Gong Gong and Popo, weaving that in. So in your book, you actually write Popo and Gong Gong, which I find very special, and it's so hard to find that. And like we were already talking at the very top of the conversation, where you can count basically in one hand the amount of children's books you can see with people who look like us on the cover. And just weaving in Gong Gong and Popo in that narrative and normalizing that to make us feel so seen and to feel so recognized and to feel like, oh, my language matters, my heritage matters, my culture matters. I feel like you did such a brilliant job in weaving that in, but also keeping that brevity there too, because I do feel children's books is one of the most difficult things to do, to write, to keep it short and succinct. How was that process like for you, to know that you're intentionally weaving in and educating people about our heritage, our culture growing up, but also making it short to the point so that children can actually understand?
Well, yeah, I feel like I always joke with that I speak Chinglish, because like sometimes I'll like speak English and there'll be Chinese words peppered in, or vice versa. And I wanted this book to have like it just effortlessly woven in throughout, nods to my culture, my background. And when I think about the book and like the last few lines of the book, I'm not supposed to read the book, am I? Like, no? Okay, good. I could read you guys a bedtime story if you want. I'm ready to sleep. But like the book ends in a certain way, and I'll just read this portion. And it says like, we see your golden heart. You are beauty, but so much more. You are strength. You are power. You, May, are golden. Say it with us. Believe it. I am golden. And so this book, the reason I ended the book this way is because I had the intention and the hope that like, and the kind of dream that like a child hearing this right before they go to sleep every night, it becomes a manifesto. It becomes something that they can hold, or a motto they can hold and like kind of repeat in their head. And again, every time you say this to your child, you are like putting that intention and that hope and that dream into your child that they will see themselves this way. I did a book reading last night for a bookstore in Pasadena, and there was like a 9-year-old girl who like on this virtual event like had the question of like, it was so interesting how you wrote the book from a parent's perspective. Like, what was your like impetus in this perspective? And I was like, how old are you? Are you like 40? What? But I did write this book from the parent's perspective because in so many ways I grew up with parents who show love in very unique ways. They were definitely not like open and effusive, and I think a lot of Asian families are this way. Like, I don't know that I ever heard my parents explicitly say, "We love you so much. We're so proud of you." They show their love by like doing like, you will get a huge plate of apples. In the middle of a Zoom call with like 46 people, I will get a plate of apples like put in my face. Or like, my dad is big on acts of service, so he'll like be like, "Your car is disgusting, I vacuumed it." And I'm like, "Thanks," but that's how he shows love, by doing things that like for me. And so I was hoping when writing this book that this book also would be a way for parents to have conversations with their kids that they might find hard to start or initiate. During COVID, I spoke a lot with our pod was basically my parents. Like they were the only people we saw after like months and months of not seeing them and like strict isolation in early COVID. And I remember asking my mom what the hardest part of moving to America was, and I thought she would say like, "Oh, the language," or like, "Oh, New York is so different." And she literally was like, I was incredibly lonely. And but to be able to have those conversations, because I was like, and see the pictures of my grandfather on my mom and dad's side, who I'd never gotten to meet. Our son River is actually named after my grandfather on my dad's side. River obviously is not like a Chinese word, but my grandfather on my dad's side was born on an island between two rivers. Oh. And so we wanted to have that like nod to him, because like Tao is named after my grandfather on my mom's side. But like I definitely felt closer to my parents in creating this book because of all the pictures in the book. Even the illustrations of the family members all came from these archival photos that my dad, who is like, he makes me look disorganized. He like went through all his photo albums and pulled pictures. They're all like color coded and like date, like kind of totally, wow. Like he's very like, he's very meticulous in that, but it's wonderful to be able to like talk to him about the photos and the significance of each one.
When I was reading this again, the second time around, it really hit me that the images and the words were so powerful and accessible in a way where if my grandma were still alive, my ama, my dad's side, who I grew up with her raising me, I would have shared this book with her. And it's not just for children. It is for people, even our elderly, for them to see that their sacrifices were worth it. And you wrote something in there, I don't want to give away spoilers, but it was very touching and very moving, and it really was a beautiful, deep nod to what the paths have been paved for us, and for them moving here to immigrate to a brand new country, not knowing how to speak the language, yet finding ways to survive so that their younger generations can have a better opportunity. So in that way, how do you think that your children will take this with them and think of their own grandparents?
I hope that it helps Ren and Tao and eventually River understand like how brave and courageous my parents had to be to move here. The line you might be referring to in the book is like, "In this upside down world, you, clever child, are our teacher and translator." Because for me, even now, like I call every doctor for my mom and dad. I go to many doctor's appointments, like not as much lately, but I FaceTime with the doctor while they're in the appointment. I literally like am calling their dentists to like figure out what their dental plan is, because they don't feel confident in the language. And so like, I've been doing that for like decades at this point. And I think a lot of first generations Americans do that, where they have to like be the translator for their parents for everything. But it's like, anytime I'm like annoyed about it, which is like, not gonna lie, sometimes frequently, it's a lot to do. But anytime I like kind of get frustrated with it, or I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've spent 46 minutes on this conference call with this like back doctor for my dad. But I think about like my mom and dad coming here knowing no one, my dad coming here with like I think $76 in his wallet, and then like they lost his suitcase at JFK, and then they gave him money and he went to Barney's, which is like so funny. But Barney's back then was not like the Barney's as we know it. But like, like coming here literally with nothing because they lost his suitcase, and not knowing many people, not speaking the language, and then like he worked at a Chinese restaurant delivering food on the Upper East Side, like that whole kind of like journey. And then I like feel bad that I'm annoyed, and then I like just kind of like, I'm like, all right, they went through a lot more than me like talking to this doctor at Cornell, so yeah.
I have to share with you, when I was reading that part, that it brought back memories of my dad, who can't speak English that well either, and he's actually very shy about it, and he does feel embarrassed about it as well. And I've been in a position where I am in a lucky position where my mom can speak fluent English, so that removes that, I guess, the responsibility or burden, especially as like an older child. And I just know that anytime, anywhere I went with my dad, it was more out of this fear of protection. So my dad loves to fish. So he would go all the way out to Long Island, hearing that Montauk had the best fishing. But I was so afraid at 10 years old that people would pick on him because he couldn't speak English. And I didn't know if he was aware, and I didn't want him to feel embarrassed. So that I would go with him to stand like a guard dog, 10 years old, like that. If any person approached my dad, I'm just like, what? But they're like, oh, sir, here's your ticket to go fishing. I'm like, oh, okay. But you know, you have that sense and that feeling of responsibility to protect your parents. And I love that you do it with so much filialness, I guess you could say, filial piety. We know that very well. Right?
That filial piety and that like Asian guilt where I'm like, oh. And then like even today when we left, my mom was like, I wish I could go listen to you talk. And I'm like, oh man. Like, you like said it right at the moment where we were leaving. And then she was like, as I was closing the door, she was like, you look so nice. And I was like, oh, Mom. But then I wouldn't be able to say all the stuff about them. So, you know. But yeah, the filial piety, the Asian guilt, the guilt in general. I think a lot of other cultures are very accomplished at guilt tripping.
Yes.
All moms, maybe. Maybe I'm like doomed to do this to Ren as well. But it's just like part of the culture.
I know, it is. And you know what? I'm pretty proud of it.
Yeah,
I am.
100%.
I really am. Truly, because look at it now, especially during the pandemic times, where there's so much about individualism. I was born American, New York born and raised, but seeing so much about individualism being prized here in America and how so few of neighbors were being looked out by each other. And there was something about that where I adapted that and seeing our families, our parents and grandparents, how they looked out for each other and that there is that responsibility to especially care for your elders. If everyone does their part, can you imagine the kind of world we would live in right now?
If only. I mean, and that's why I'm so glad that like organizations like Heart of Dinner exist, you know, and especially serving this specific community, because like so many organizations, you know, you have to speak the language.
Yes.
And so a lot of these like organizations, like, you know, if they can't read this, like, you know, the instructions to fill out the forms, like how are they ever going to get the meals? And so Heart of Dinner is so important. Another organization I love is called Apex for Youth. I think there might be some volunteers and kids in here, which works to provide like services in like mostly in the Chinatown area, but like providing like after school tutoring and sports. I think a lot of people don't realize, I think the model minority myth like follows us everywhere we go, but like most Asians in New York live below the poverty line, and that's just like the truth about it. So I try to like talk about Heart of Dinner and Apex like every opportunity I get, just because I'm trying to like raise awareness and kind of like help more people.
Thank you so much for that. We are so grateful to you, Eva, since day one. Thank you.
Cheers.
Wait, but I definitely want to talk about how do you want to leave your legacy, especially seeing this book, reading this, how much it meant to me personally, and to that kid that I used to get bullied pretty badly, elementary school. And somebody called me the C word when I was 9 years old. My mom had to hear about it. She was not happy. She stormed into the elementary school and gave my teacher a real stern talking.
That's great.
Yes, and that
Go
teacher,
Mom.
Basically, I was so scared for that kid.
Did you tell your mom, or did the...
I came home crying because I didn't understand.
I was too scared to tell my mom when I was bullied. I like never said anything because I just like was so confused. And like I don't even know that.
But because you're also a very loving filial daughter, you probably didn't want her to feel pain. Like that's like I was just like, Mom.
I think in general, like, yeah, like I don't know what my mom and dad either would have. They would have just been like, oh, that like kid is terrible. Like just stay away from him. But like that fierceness and that, like my mom was born Year of the Tiger, which is this year, and I don't know that. I feel like even in trying to, you're right, probably part of it was like protecting them from it. So. But I also like grew up, I guess, with a kind of thick skin and like also like let things roll off my back a little. I do that now, even when there's some pretty like interesting things people choose to write in DM, as I'm sure you know. And I'm kind of like, you develop a thick skin.
Okay.
So I think it began then probably at the age of 8, which is kind of sad.
Oh my God, that is heartbreaking. I know. It just hit me while you're saying that. I'm like, yeah, we were kind of programmed to be that way, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so if
years of trauma,
right,
like
years of
unfolding
trauma
on stage at the 92nd Street Y.
This is amazing, talking about trauma, but also how to come up above it, right?
Wait, but I want to ask you a question. Let's talk about Gossip Girl for a minute, and like your seminal character.
How I was playing you.
Well, yeah. I was gonna try to get that like moment where like Yin played Nelly Yuki on Gossip Girl, and then like in this new reboot of Gossip Girl, there was a moment where you were playing me. But I want to know, because that was like one of the few Asian characters from the original Gossip Girl as well, and so like I want to hear about that experience as like an Asian American like actress.
Yeah. So that experience was a very complex experience.
Okay.
When I first received the sides for the audition, it was definitely written in a very, in a way that gave a different impression and seemed to have more layers and complexity. And by the time I did book that role, grateful and everything, but also realizing, oh, those were not the plans. And kind of, I felt like the character was almost so easily replaceable in a way, and it was something at a time when you see so few Asian Americans out there on screen. Quite frankly, I was 18 or 19 years old. I was so scared to say anything. I was so afraid to lose this job because I saw how many it's not that many Asian Americans at the time, but how many actresses were out there memorizing lines in the casting room, waiting and hoping and praying they could book that opportunity. So I felt this pressure of feeling like I should always be grateful. And my mom always would remind me that. She's like, stop, what are you saying? You should be grateful. But then at the same time, I'm like, something doesn't feel right. It just feels like the character, it wasn't what I initially, how it was laid out to be. So how do we further the representation in a way where any Asian American can feel proud to walk about, and myself included, but also not being afraid to lose a job, especially starting at the very beginning, and you're building your name. But that experience was incredible in that after that, having that Gossip Girl credit, I was able to take that with me, that experience, and any single TV show or movie that I booked afterwards, I was able to have the credibility and the bravery and the knowledge and the experience to then demand for more of what I wanted to see on screen. I would talk to the directors, I would talk to the writers for the projects afterwards to say, hey, this doesn't feel right. We got to fix this. Not all Asians are the same. There needs to be more nuance. So from there, I was able to do my part in that way, which I'm really proud of. And then to come back now and get the invitation back, we're knowing that Josh Safran is now the new showrunner for HBO Max's new Gossip Girl. He was incredible. He brought so much more to the show. The show was already iconic with fashion and everything, and everybody loved it for that. I did too. But Josh really brought another level of inclusivity, finally. And hearing him talk about how he wanted to approach the show the new way and to really reflect what New York City is like, seeing people like all of us in this room truly reflected in the show, I was so much more excited. And then he did the cameo and then saying, you're gonna be dressing up in this costume themed episode as Eva Chen. And I'm like, how the hell are you gonna say no to that? Of course.
So funny.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was so excited just to hear that.
It was so funny because that episode came out the day, that episode came out the same day as Tom and I had shot our house for Architectural Digest. And so my DM was like, people were more excited about you as me on Gossip Girl than I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm gonna be in Architectural Digest. It's so fancy. I shoved all our kids' junk in one room. It's still in that one storage room. And so the house looks really nice. And then literally my DM, because I didn't know that it was gonna happen. And suddenly my DM was like, oh my God, you're a Gossip Girl. And I was like, what? And then I opened it and they found the exact Sandy Liang coat that I was wearing. They had the exact Chanel bag that I had. The hair, the sunglasses, and I was like, it was kind of weird because when I was looking at it, I was like, is that me? And then I was like, wait, this person is playing me? So it was like kind of a great moment. And then I like DM'd, because when I tagged Gossip Girl, I was like, I could have actually done a real cameo. I would have like killed to do a real cameo. Hit me up next time.
Oh my God, I'm sure they will. Are you kidding?
No, I literally like DM'd them and was like, I'm waiting.
Oh my gosh.
Like that. I'm waiting. I like creepily DM like John Chu because I was like the next Crazy Rich Asians. Like, I want to be Radio 1 Asia. I don't know. And then also, who else did I creepily DM? Simu Liu because I was like, I can be a superhero. Like I want to do the stunt training. Hang me from some strings. Like make me a bad guy. I don't know. And he's like, I don't know yet. Yeah. Anytime there's like an Asian project now, I'm like, I'm available. I'm a member of SAG-AFTRA.
Yes.
Like let's do it.
Oh my gosh, well, you are an icon, and
No.
I truly had the honor of playing you with your Sandy Liang original coat. It was the best coat ever. If you don't know what we're talking about, please Google it. And also, your Architectural Digest. Your home is stunning.
I can take no credit for that. Like I worked with an amazing designer named Heidi Hendricks, and the only kind of like instructions I gave her was like all the material in the house is made with outdoor fabrics. What? Because of my kids. They literally will be like, ooh, what
boom.
is this? Like chocolate milk? Like, so everything is like waterproof in the house for that reason.
So that's a great tip for anybody who's going to be
use outdoor fabrics.
Doing up the home, do that.
Sure.
I do one question before I know we're going to get to audience Q&A.
I think someone's been walking around
Yes. So if you haven't given your
like waving notes
cues yet, please do give it so that we can start asking.
Here we go.
Amazing.
Thank you. Right on time.
Alrighty. Okay, so this one is from Emily Chen. Do you have a favorite Asian tradition from your childhood that you will continue with your own family? Oh, I love that.
Ooh. So Lunar New Year or Chinese New Year was last Tuesday, I guess. Was it Tuesday? I've been on book tour, so it's like
either Monday or Tuesday.
Oh yeah, New Year's Eve was Monday night, and
Yes.
then Tuesday was the day. We celebrated on Sunday because I had to be in Boston for a book reading on Monday night. And I remember growing up, and I remember like having big Chinese New Year dinners. You have the fish that you have to save some of so that you have like bountiful food for the next year. Remember like huge piles of oranges. Like a lot of the foods in the food spread like are foods that we would eat. But like many young, impressionable Chinese kids, the hongbao, which is like red envelopes, was like the most exciting part.
Yes.
Because basically you get a red envelope with like lucky money. And there are two ways people approach it. My brother still has every hongbao he has ever gotten.
He's so
like
cute.
Literally every single one. He's like saved them, like did not spend the money. I literally spent that money the second I got it. Like I literally got it and was like, bye, I'm going to Barnes & Noble. And and I spent a lot of it on books. And so I don't want to be like, say like that money was the best tradition, but those red envelopes really left an impression on me. And then I remember when we were celebrating New Year's last week, like Ren and Tao were like, yay, hongbao, and I'm like, no, it's so much more than that. And so now I'm trying to like make sure that they know about all the traditions and know about like the legend of Niang, the monster, and like why you wear red and why you play drums and fireworks and blah, blah, blah. But they just are very excited about the red envelopes.
Okay, can I tell you a tip? You know what my mom used to do? I would have to return the money to her immediately, right afterwards.
What?
So she would collect that money and she's like, count it. How much did your aunt give you? I'm like, 100. She's like, that means we have to give double back for her son.
What?
Give me the money and I'm gonna add another 100.
Yeah, we don't do that.
Okay, never mind.
No.
All right.
Literally.
Y'all are so sweet.
I think
You're
they
so
also
nice.
got like $5. So,
Okay.
Yeah, we're like, I mean, Tao is like 5. I don't think he understands the concept of money. Actually, he kind of does. Every time we go to the Lego store, he'll be like, too expensive? And I'm like, yeah.
So cute.
Yeah. Legos are really expensive.
They are expensive.
He was like, Titanic Lego. And I'm like, that is like $1,600. No.
Oh
way.
my gosh. Well, you're a very wonderful mom.
Oh.
Amazing. All right, so next question we have from Allison. Who are your mentors?
That is a tough question because I think people often ask about mentors, and I think the word mentor is like a really loaded one.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I've had a lot of people who've like guided me through my career, but then like in terms of like going back and asking people for like advice, I would say the person who gives the best advice in my life is Tom Bannister, sitting in the front row. He really does give very good advice and is like super supportive, except when he's making granola, at which point he's like in the zone and like ignoring me. I would say I've had a lot of people guide me through my life. I would say the first person who ever told me I could be a writer was my English teacher named Mrs. Susan Sagor. And I remember her, she used to wear like these beautiful pleated full skirts, and she would sit at the edge of the desk very elegantly with like one leg tucked underneath her and another with like her shoe kind of hanging. She would wear like heels, and they would like, just very stylish, like they would like hang off her foot. And I remember her saying like, you know, Eva, have you ever thought about being a writer? Because, and, you know, your creative writing is wonderful. And I was like, because I always thought I was gonna be a doctor growing up. So she kind of planted that first seed in me. You know, when I was at Teen Vogue for like 7 years, like I'm always grateful to Amy Astley, the editor-in-chief there, because she always just kind of like let me experiment and do what I wanted. In a way, she gave me so much autonomy. So I remember like saying like, I have this idea, I want like Pat McGrath to do this story, and it's going to be inspired by this, and then we're going to use this model who no one's heard of, but like is from Sudan and is so cool. And then she would be like, sounds great, and like I would do it. So she gave me a lot of creative freedom and license. And of course, like working with Anna Wintour was like this amazing kind of life-changing experience, because I learned so much about like how to be a leader and then how to be decisive. She's like the most succinct, decisive person you will ever meet, and like responds to emails like weirdly, extremely quickly, where it's like I just pressed send like 36 seconds ago, and then it says 32 seconds later, it's like, yes, period. And you're like, oh. And then if she does an exclamation point, you're like, oh my God, I got an exclamation point. Whereas like for me, every email I have have 46 exclamation points, and then I will be like, ooh, does that sound friendly enough? Let me add another one. You guys, you know what I mean, right?
Same.
When you're like looking at how many, so that people can tell you're enthusiastic. And so of course she's been like an amazing person who's helped guide my career. And then my editor now, Jean Feiwell, is just like this, she's like a legend in the book publishing industry. And I remember when I was like looking for a publishing house for my first book, Juno Valentine, and we were looking at all these different houses, and my agent was like, Eva, Jean. And I'm like, Jean? Like, and she was like, Jean did the Babysitter's Club. She did like Goosebumps. She did like all these like epic, huge series. She's done pretty much every year. There's like a Caldecott or a Newbery Award winner. She was like, you have to go with Jean. And when she's just like, she has tattoos. She's like cool. She's very sarcastic. And so she's been someone who's guided my career, and I feel so grateful to her.
Oh my gosh, you were so lucky to be surrounded by so many amazing people.
Very, very
but
lucky.
also you have those people gravitate towards you because of who you are.
No, but I also feel like, you know, it's one of the reasons why when I meet people like on all these virtual events, I always ask like, do you have questions about career? Like, and before COVID, I used to do like informational interviews where I would meet with like college students, because I feel like I have been so fortunate to get so much like guidance throughout my career, and feel really lucky about that. So I always try to like reinvest it back and send that energy back out into the universe.
That's incredible. You're already so busy, and you invest time like dedicating that every single time.
I mean, it's harder to do it now because of COVID, because like people used to like just come to my office and I'd be like, you have 15 minutes, ask me everything. But it's been harder to do lately.
She's amazing. Also, in case anyone didn't know, she was a pre-med in Johns Hopkins, right? So just so
And
you
I think
know.
there's some Hopkins people in the audience. Yay! Like 2 people. My two friends who are like, we're gonna be there, and I'm like, I'm gonna shout at Hopkins. Thank you, Jamie and Abby.
That's amazing. Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right, so next question we have. Do you do any daily affirmations that you do for yourself or with your kids? I know we kind of talked about.
I mean, I would
book,
love
in
for
addition.
like I am golden to be an affirmation.
Yes.
My only affirmation now is just like literally around survival. I just feel like these last 2 years for everyone has been so hard. Like obviously, and I just feel like right now is when, for me at least, I'm beginning to feel like the unraveling and like the burnout is like starting to set in, because I can feel the walls of my apartment like closing in. Like I don't think. It's weird because I can feel the energy of my apartment, not to sound totally new age. I can feel that my apartment being like, please leave. Like, can you please get out? Because you guys are in here and destroying, like there's like scuffs on the wall, and I'm starting to feel everything like come in on me. And also like, so we had like a COVID journey. Like for those of you guys who follow me on Instagram know that like literally everyone got COVID. It was 20 days from day one exposure to like the last negative. And it was like a lot, like, you know, because it brought me right back to 2 years ago when school shut down abruptly. I was on Zoom school again. Like I was really triggered by that because like Zoom school is not how a wiggly 5-year-old boy is supposed to learn. Like it was really hard. And so right now, literally my daily mantra is like surviving, maybe not thriving, but surviving, like literally just trying to get through. And I do feel like there is hope. I do feel like when the weather warms up again, like now that I've had COVID, I'm like, I want to go to Disney. I want to like touch the bathroom handles, and I'm not like ugh, but like I'm not going to use my like elbow to open. Like no, I still am obviously super cautious and wearing a K95, but we're traveling for the first time in like over 2 years, and also for me with COVID, I was in Milan when COVID, like remember how like Milan was
Yes.
the hot spot
Yeah.
and like Italy was the hot spot? I was in Milan the week that like it all went down. And so I was actually in isolation and under quarantine before everyone else in America was. Because the moment I got back to the US and I like walked into the office, like 10, not Facebook security people, but people like pounced on me. Security was like, my manager emailed me and was like, you need to leave the building. Are you in the building? And I'm like, yeah, I just got back from Milan. He was like, you're not allowed in the building because you are like, there's risk analysis COVID. And I was like, wait, but, and then like literally I was on quarantine like a full 3 weeks before the country shut down. And at the time I remember, like, don't you guys all remember being like, I'll see you in 3 weeks? Yeah. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, I can hear my apartment talking to me and it's saying, leave. So I obviously things have escalated in my mind.
Oh my gosh. Hopefully soon things will get better.
I do think so, and I think like when people are responsible and like, you know, I remember when we were going through COVID, I got some like really intense DMs from people because I was testing every day. I have a newborn at home. My parents are like, they wouldn't admit it, but they're senior citizens, you know? And like just as out of responsibility for all the people around me and all the people like and the teachers and like just everything in Tao who's like not vaccinated, like I remember someone being like, you're testing too much, like what's wrong with you? And I'm like, if I'm lucky enough to have tests and like be able to find those Binax tests, Walmart.com, by the way, not hashtag ad or sponsored. You can always get Binax on Walmart. I can always find it there. Anyway, and so I was like testing every day and I was doing PCRs and I just felt like it was so important to be responsible for all the people around me.
Yeah, and I always loved seeing your stories about that because you were truly showing as a real example, role model, this is how it should be. Who actually asked how you test too much? I got a
ridiculous.
I'm so sorry about that.
A lot of people were like, oh, it's just a cold for kids. And I'm like, not always. Like, you know, and like, I don't want to even take the risk of, you know, of having a kid have to go to the hospital. It's just like.
Well, I'm glad you didn't take the risk, and thank you for stepping up and showing people how it should be done. Thank you. Okay, I love this next question. It's a craft question. What is the illustration process for your books?
When you said craft, I thought of mac and cheese. This is how you know I'm a mom. I was like, mac and cheese, yes. So I pair with illustrators. I only wish I could be this good of an artist. So this illustrator is Sophie Diao, and I actually found her on Instagram, as I did with all my other illustrators. So right around the time of the shootings in Atlanta that were definitely hate crimes, even though people have stopped talking about that case in the news as much. But you know, she had posted something around like the rage and sorrow she felt that another Asian illustrator had posted to her stories. And so I started following Sophie, and when I had written the book, I basically went to my publisher and said, like, this is the woman, she's gonna be amazing. And she works at Google, actually. You know, when you go to google.com and you see like the illustrations, she's one of the 10 artists responsible for some of those illustrations. And so I know, like, so many Asian moms in this audience who are like, Google, wow. Yeah, I know, it's very impressive. I know, when I told my mom, she was like, wow, Google. And I'm like, yeah, I work in tech too. My mom and dad always tell me about this like one cousin who works at Snapchat, and I'm like, and they're like, I know, but he works at Snapchat. It's cool. And I'm like, okay. Anyway, So the way we work together is kind of different from most authors and illustrators. So one thing to know about most authors and illustrators, and for children's books, and I was like fascinated by this, most of them never talk. So all the work, let's say you're holding up like not this book, but like a children's book, it's all done like the author hands in their manuscript, which is the words, and then an illustrator is signed, and the author doesn't get to choose the illustrator. Oh. And so basically an art director is the one who kind of works with the illustrator and blends it all together. And literally, and Sophie said this, Derek has said this, like Matthew, who was the illustrator for Roxy, for all of them, and they were like, this is a really weird process you have. Because I basically I don't art direct my own books, but I basically work directly with the illustrator, and so we do late night phone calls, we were texting, we were DMing, we were WhatsApping to kind of work on the direction of the book, down to like the hand positioning of her hands, the way her head is tilted up. Like I sent her like Sophie notes and said like, I want it to feel like she's like basking in the sun. I want her to like look like she's like feeling the warmth and radiance of the sun. But it's a really unusual process that I have, and I think that I'm really grateful to my publisher because they let me do it this way because they know like. I was an editor-in-chief of a magazine, like where I literally would figure out where I wanted to put captions, and I would say like, oh, change the caption to this. And it was really hard for me to detach from that part of my brain. We had an amazing art director who is Korean American actually, and she was actually in Seoul when we were working on this book. So it truly is, it's a fully Asian helmed project, and so it's really a labor of love.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that process, and I love that you were able to have that experience with Sophie as well. Okay, so the next one we have from Amanda K. Thank you for teaching me about the magic of sumo oranges. Maybe a topic for your next book? That was awesome.
Listen, that was what I ate right before coming here. Sumo oranges are delicious. I feel like the OG sumo orange influencer. And I only regret that right now they're very hard to get on like Instacart and Fresh Direct because they're like always sold out now. And also the season is so short. But when I was in DC, no pressure, like for the next reading I do, feel free to bring me some sumo oranges. But like someone came to the book signing and she was like, I went to Wegmans and I bought you 8 sumo oranges. And I literally, like, she got the most full body contact hug from me because I hadn't had time to eat dinner and like I have 3 left. But the problem is that Tao can peel them himself. Oh. And every time he eats one, I'm like, you just ate $4 of mommy's oranges. Can you please eat those less expensive oranges over there? But he's like, these are so yummy. And I'm like, yeah. Yeah. And so I have to hide food. I don't know if anyone else does this, but I like hide food from my kids and husband all the time.
Oh my God, amazing.
Tom's like, yes, yes.
You know Tom's gonna sneak them and dry them, dehydrate them for his granola next, right?
They're too expensive, I think, for your granola. They're like an extremely luxury.
He's like, I'm adding more value, okay?
That's true, although Tom uses like very expensive ingredients.
Tom, do it. I'm kidding.
Yeah. It is the Birkin of granolas, which I feel like I'm not allowed to say because like Hermes is gonna sue me, but whatever, it is.
Well, we're excited to try your granola, Tom. Okay, so the next question we have is, have your kids started to express any interest in fashion?
Oh, I don't know. Tom, what do you think? There we go. I would say Ren likes fashion, but she's not obsessed with it. Like I know some kids around her age who like go to fashion school and like she's not like aware of brands or labels so much, but she does express herself in terms of she loves patterns and bright colors. Tao, I would say, is closer to Tom. Shockingly, Tom is not wearing New Balances right now. Shockingly, Tom is not wearing a navy blue t-shirt, although you might have a navy blue t-shirt on under your sweater, do you? Yes, okay. So I would call Tao a uniform dresser. There's one shirt that he loves. It's like navy and red stripes from primary.com. It's like great for like parents because it's like not crazy. And so he basically has like 4 of those t-shirts and then he wears whatever sweatpants and then he wears New Balances. So like Tao is like a mini Tom. Ren is like loves mixed patterns. And River, my goal is just to dress him in novelty clothing until he can talk. So like, what's the next holiday? Like Valentine's Day? I need to buy like a giant fluffy heart costume for him. I should have dressed him up as a groundhog for Groundhog's Day. Like the wonderful thing about having babies is that they can't speak or protest, and so you can dress them up in novelty clothing.
Oh my God, amazing. Also, please, if you haven't seen him yet, check out her stories. I stalk her every single day. Such cute kids. Y'all make the cutest babies. Okay.
Tom's like, that's nice, but no more.
Yeah, he's like, mm.
Yeah, no more, no more.
Alrighty, what was your favorite book as a child? I know you mentioned Babysitter's Club. Is it that one?
Babysitter's Club was a big one for me. I loved, there was a book called From the Mixed Up Files of Basil E. Frankweiler, which is about a little girl named Claudia Kincaid and her brother Jamie who run away from their home in Connecticut and live in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And so that book was a huge one for me, and I'm rereading it now because anytime I want to read Ren a book, or Tao a book, like I try to read it first. So that was a huge one. As like slightly older, there was a book called The Westing Game, which is about like, it's like a mystery and it's like so good. And like little kid books, like Are You My Mother is such a good one. Yeah, there's so many books. I've loved all the Roald Dahl books. I recently learned that Roald Dahl's like slightly problematic as an author. And it's so hard because it's like his books, like the Potter books, which also has a problematic anyway. But like, yeah, it's like, I read a lot of books that for me made me feel seen and like that kind of make you feel like there's magic within. Yeah. Because I think that as an insecure or unsure child, you know, books can make you feel like you're important and that there's like something in you that's special. Yeah. And that's why it's like I love writing for children. I love doing book readings for kids, like because I love being able to convey that message that they're special.
Yeah, and also feeling less lonely, like we were talking about, right?
Totally.
It's like the running theme of, I think, majority of us growing up feeling lonely so many times, but to have that, it's like a safety net and a comfort blanket. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was your favorite dish, Chinese dish, that you love to eat?
So you'll see in this book, there is a spread that's like just food. And Sophie and I had so much fun doing this spread because we got like really hungry afterwards and then we texted each other pictures of the food we got. So there is a dish here that is 番茄炒蛋. That means like literally means tomatoes stir-fried with egg. And literally, it sounds really simple. It is very simple, but it creates this like yummy, aromatic, zesty kind of stew, and you put it over white rice, and that is like probably my purest form of comfort food. And so I love that. And actually, during early COVID, when like you remember when like we were all like, oh, we can't order from restaurants, and then we were like, wait, all these restaurants are closing. We need to order from restaurants to support them. That is one dish that I like actually learned how to make myself. I'm not like the best cook, to be honest. Like I'm not good at like Jamie in the audience, my friend from Hopkins, is like an excellent cook. Like I look forward to going to her house to eat her food, but that is not me. I'm like a big takeout person because I feel like I'm stimulating economic growth every time I order.
You're supporting businesses. They're hurting. Come on.
Small owned business. So like the 3 pizzas we ate today, that is stimulating the economy. Yes.
Thank you for saving America. I appreciate it.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So I think, you know what? We went through all the questions.
Yay.
Perfect timing.
Oh my gosh, right on time as well.
Oh my goodness. Well, I guess, you know what? Can I wrap up with one question to squeeze in? I realized that you wrote this when you were pregnant.
Yes. I still feel pregnant sometimes.
Oh my, how was that process like for you to write this during a pandemic, during when you're pregnant, and just trying to survive?
Listening to the walls of my house telling me to leave. It was okay. I do most of my writing actually in a Roald Dahl book called The BFG, The Big Friendly Giant. And he talks about like in the early, like late at night, he calls it the witching hour, where it's like really silent and quiet. And there is that in New York City. And it's usually between like 11 and 1. It's before the garbage trucks come like clattering down the street. It's before, well, there's still drunk people screaming outside once in a while. But like, so I wrote most of my books at night. It's the only time I really feel like I have to myself, fully to myself, because emails more or less stop. Like I don't look, I'm not like obsessively checking Instagram as much. And so I feel like those are slices of time that I carve out for myself. And then Tom is like a really early riser. We actually have like completely conflicting schedules because he wakes up at 5 a.m. And then I go to sleep usually between 12 and 1. And so that's like usually when I did it. I would say it's like I'm a very hormonal pregnant person. All people who are pregnant are hormonal, but like I really like this book was like a very emotional process for me. And actually when I did the audiobook for it, like I was like crying at the end of the audio reading. It was very awkward. I felt bad for like the poor sound engineer who was like on the microphone, do you need a minute? And I'm like, like now, this is maybe TMI, I'm like, I've been nursing River for like 8 months, going into 9 months, and it's like coming to the end of a journey. I'm gonna like throw the breast pump like out the window. But like I'm re-feeling all those emotions because like my whole body is one giant hormone. And so yeah, it's been a really personal process, and like being on book tour, talking about this book, talking about my family, it's like all been kind of surreal to me that this book exists, because this book truly is an ode to my parents. And I was so nervous even to give it to them, like, because I got copies of this book like weeks ago, and on Lunar New Year when we were celebrating, I gave one to my mom, and I said to my mom, I was like, if you don't like this book, like, please do not tell me, please do not call me and tell me that I could do better and blah, 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 blah. She's a little bit of a tiger mom. I was like, because you will literally break my heart if you do not like it. And she was like, okay. And then she like texted me and she was like, your book was very good. I think it will be a bestseller. And then that was like the most validation she's ever given me in my whole entire life. I'm so glad she's not here right now, by the way. But it meant a lot for her to say that. But this book is truly like the most personal one I've done. And I feel it feels like the closest to like an autobiography I have so far.
Thank you so much for putting all of your heart and soul into this story. I'm telling you, I was tearing up. I've said it earlier, I'm gonna say it again. It really felt so personal because of how personal it was to you. And it made me feel seen, and it brought back so many memories, and just wondering if I had something like your book growing up, how much more confident I would be and how much more loved and seen and appreciated I would have felt growing up. I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful for your energy and all that you put out there to bring joy to our people, to our communities, because that's what we need more. We need more joy right now. And we're allowed to celebrate our joy, and we should. So thank you so much for writing I Am Golden.
Thank you, and everyone who's staying for the signing. I see a few like paper bags on some people's laps. Do you want to talk through what the activity is?
Sure. So like Eva mentioned in the beginning, Heart of Dinner, we are an organization that counters isolation and food insecurity within the Asian elderly immigrant demographic here in New York City. I co-founded it with my girlfriend Moonlin Sai, sitting right there in our very small, 250 square foot apartment that we live in and we share. So we started cooking between the both of us. One of the first meals, 200 meals, realized we couldn't reach as many elderly like that, so we quickly scaled with restaurant partners like Helen Nguyen of Saigon Social sitting right there as well. And also we were able to start packing, and not only was it hot meals, we grew and expanded and used donations to also source amazing culturally thoughtful produce like bok choy, things that you would see, our elderly or grandparents would see at home, because we heard they were getting cans of tuna at home. So they didn't know how to even open the cans because of arthritis, or didn't even know how to cook it. So now we put all of the meals into those brown bags that you see that many of you are holding. We decorate each and every one of the brown bags, so they're all unique, all hand illustrated, and each of them have handwritten letters as well attached to it. So you all today will just decorate the bags, and then we'll collect it at the end after you're done. And then after we have it on our end, we're gonna attach the notes ourselves and then pack it to our elderly. And your bags will literally be in the hands of our elderly recipients in the next upcoming few weeks. So we're really excited for that, and thank you so much for your time and your energy, bringing love and cheer and also comfort to our elderly who are often living by themselves with no one to help them. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you so much for coming out.